Chris Rock thought it was just another joke. He didn't expect a war, and Karoline Levitt was more than ready. What started as a laugh ended as a live demolition. What starts as comedy ends as a public takedown, and it only took one woman to flip the script. The lights were blinding. The crowd was alive, and Chris Rock, standing front and center with a mic in one hand and that familiar mischievous grin, was about to kick off the storm of the night. He didn't ease into it. He didn't warm the crowd up gently. He went straight for the jugular. Donald Trump's son Barron is the only person who can walk into a room full of mirrors and still think he's the most important reflection, Chris shouted, laughing at his own joke. The audience roared. Cameras panned across a sea of amused faces, some shocked, some thrilled, but all of them tuned in. The host of The Pulse, Samantha Pierce, chuckled nervously. She didn't expect it to start that hot. Chris wasn't done, not even close. "I mean, come on," he continued, pacing across the studio floor. "The kid's named Barron. That's not a name. That's a medieval job title. What's next, Sir Lancelot Trump?" More laughter. Someone in the back actually snorted. Chris soaked it in like a rock star hitting a high note. "Every time I see him, he looks like he just finished scolding a servant for not polishing the gold rims on his Nintendo Switch." The laughter turned to applause. Chris bowed theatrically. "Man's got that 600-year-old European stare like he's planning to invade France next week." He dropped the punchline with perfect timing, and the crowd rewarded him like royalty. Chris looked over at Samantha and winked. "I'm just saying, he ain't your average teen." But what he didn't see was the producer backstage, gesturing nervously at the curtain. A storm was forming. The studio's energy, once celebratory and wild, was about to shift hard, and it would all begin when a single pair of heels clicked across the stage floor. The laughter dies the moment she walks in, and the war of words begins. The applause hadn't even fully died down when stage right stirred. A silence slipped into the room like fog. The crowd quieted, unsure if it was part of the act. But it wasn't. Karoline Levitt stepped out slow and steady. She wore navy blue like battle armor, her blonde hair tied back with military precision, her eyes locked forward with purpose. No grin, no wave, no need. The audience didn't cheer, at first. Instead, they whispered, confused, curious. And then a few of them clapped. And then more. Chris Rock turned slowly, eyes narrowing like a cat sensing a rival in the room. "Oh, no," he said into the mic, grinning again. "The White House Rescue Squad has arrived." The crowd laughed nervously this time. Karoline didn't react, not yet. She walked past him and sat down across from him, folding her hands neatly, spine straight as a steel rod. The contrast was striking. Where Chris was all energy and swagger, she was calm fury, poised silence. Samantha Pierce looked like she wanted to vanish behind her cue cards. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice shaky, "please welcome White House Press Secretary Karoline Levitt." Polite applause followed. Nothing thunderous yet. Chris leaned into the mic again. "You here to explain why Barron Trump wears suits to breakfast? Or maybe deliver a press release on why he always looks like he's seen ghosts of failed real estate deals?" A few chuckles, but less than before. A subtle shift in energy. Karoline just blinked once. No flinch, no reaction. She hadn't said a word, but somehow she was already in control. And Chris, though he didn't know it yet, had just walked into his own ambush. He thought she came to defend. He didn't know she came to destroy. Samantha Pierce forced a smile and turned to Karoline, trying to maintain balance on a stage tipping into chaos. "Karoline," she said, "you've just heard Chris share some pointed observations about Barron Trump. Do you have any thoughts?" Silence. Karoline looked directly at Rock. Her eyes didn't move, her hands didn't twitch, and when she finally spoke, it was calm, so calm it almost felt dangerous. "Chris," she began, "mocking a 17-year-old boy for laughs isn't edgy, it's lazy." The audience gasped. That wasn't a counterpunch, it was a scalpel. Chris opened his mouth, but Karoline kept going. "You stand here talking about Barron's name, his face, the way he dresses, as if he's some caricature in your comedy routine. But what you didn't mention is that while you were collecting Grammy dust, he was collecting AP credits." A few claps broke out. Chris shifted in his chair. Karoline didn't stop. "You call him spoiled. I call him a young man growing up under constant attack, in front of the entire world, without ever asking to be famous." More applause now, louder. Chris's eyes narrowed. "And you think it's funny," she said. "But let me remind you, while you're standing here laughing, Barron Trump is mentoring under political scholars, building platforms for education reform, and working with veterans' charities." The applause turned thunderous. Karoline finally leaned back in her seat, eyes still locked on Chris Rock. "Maybe next time, aim your jokes higher than a teenager." Samantha blinked. The studio had flipped. In less than 3 minutes, the laughter had turned into tension and admiration. Chris Rock cracked his neck, his grin faltering for the first time. It was on. Faced with facts, he doubles down, and it backfires fast. Chris leaned forward, lips curled. "Oh," he drawled into the mic, "you got stats now. You press folks always got a spreadsheet somewhere. But here's what I got. Common sense and 2 working eyeballs." He stood up and began pacing, flipping the mic from hand to hand. "I don't care if Barron passed the SAT at age 6. That boy's got the personality of a beige carpet and the warmth of a Russian winter." The crowd laughed again, but less enthusiastically. Chris didn't care. He was fired up. "You say he mentors under scholars. Good for him. He probably got lost on the way to the polo field and landed in a library." Some chuckles. Karoline didn't move. "I'm sorry, but Barron Trump walks around like someone poured money into a mannequin and gave it Wi-Fi." A few more laughs, but mixed with groans now. Chris stopped pacing, looked straight at Karoline. "You talk like the kids Gandhi and Gucci. But let's be real. He's the heir to a dynasty of drama and bad spray tans, and if he's the future, I'm applying for a passport to space." Samantha shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Even the cameraman held his breath. Karoline still didn't speak. Her silence was beginning to say more than Chris's entire rant. And that silence? It was about to turn into something he couldn't laugh off. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. The air was tight. You could feel it press against your lungs. Karoline sat still for a beat longer, as if letting Chris's words hang in the air just long enough to choke themselves. Then finally, she moved. She stood up, and when she spoke, her voice didn't rise. It dropped into something low, measured, and lethal. "Chris," she said, eyes burning through him, "you've made a career talking over people, but tonight you're talking down to someone who isn't even here to speak for himself." A hush fell. She turned to the crowd. Barron Trump didn't ask to be born into the spotlight. He didn't run for office. He didn't beg for attention. Yet here you are using him as a punchline because you're too out of touch to write new material. The crowd shifted. The vibe was changing. Chris tried to chuckle, but it came out dry. Karoline wasn't done. While you were mocking him for his posture, Barron was meeting with tech startups about youth mental health. While you were ridiculing his name, he was quietly helping his mother run literacy campaigns. Scattered applause, then stronger. "And you know what's funniest?" she added. "You claim to be the truth-teller, the voice of the people. But all I see is a man clinging to jokes about a teenager because the world's moved on without him." The audience clapped harder now. Chris looked shaken but forced a smirk. Samantha Pierce didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Karoline had taken the mic, figuratively, and she wasn't giving it back. From king of comedy to the court jester, the tide turns visibly. Chris Rock stood, arms folded, trying to shake it off. "Okay," he said into the mic. "You want stats? Fine. Barron has been in the public eye for what, 5 years? What's he done besides look awkward and stay quiet in expensive suits?" He grinned at the audience. But the grin didn't land. "Y'all really clapping for PowerPoint press releases now? Man, this country used to like jokes." There were laughs, fewer now. Something had cracked. Karoline stepped forward, her hands still folded. She didn't pace. She didn't shout. "What's he done?" she asked calmly. "How about surviving adolescence under the most aggressive media lens in modern politics? How about maintaining dignity while grown adults mocked his appearance, voice, and even his height? Including you, Chris." Another ripple of applause. "What you call silence," she added, "I call strength. What you call privilege, I call responsibility." Chris Rock opened his mouth, but said nothing. Karoline turned to the crowd. "Let's talk real. Barron Trump didn't slam mics or scream online. He stayed focused. He stayed respectful. Maybe that's why you're so uncomfortable." The crowd was hers now. Rock shifted from foot to foot. The heavyweight comedian had been hit, and the audience felt it. "When you hear silence after a clapback, you know someone just lost." Chris tried again. All right," he said, voice cracking just slightly. "Y'all want to believe the fairy tale of perfect political children? Go ahead. But I'm not buying the Barron is an Angel press tour." No laughter this time. Karoline stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a blade-sharp whisper that still cut through the room like thunder. "You don't have to buy it," she said. "You just have to stop tearing down a child to sell your act." Then she paused. "You say he's privileged, but you're the millionaire on stage using a teenager for content. Who's the real clown, Chris?" The studio exploded in applause. Chris froze. Karoline didn't wait for a reaction. She turned, nodded at Samantha, and took her seat. Calm, collected, triumphant. Chris sat back down slowly, his swagger gone. His smirk faded, mic trembling slightly in his hand. Millions watched it unfold, but online, the war just began. By the time the segment ended, #Barron Defense and #Levitt Claps Back were trending on X. Clips of Karoline's takedown were already circulating, cut into 30-second bites with titles like "When the Press Secretary Went Full Savage" and "Chris Rock Just Got Schooled." In contrast, clips of Rock yelling and mocking Barron were being dissected with captions like "Too Far" and "Chris Rock Just Flopped." Rock, clearly rattled, went live from his phone 2 hours later, his tone defensive, loud, desperate. "I'm Chris Rock," he shouted to 300,000 viewers. "I say what people are thinking. That ain't a crime." The comments rolled fast. "Bro, take the L." "She bodied you." "Barron didn't deserve that." Chris tried to fight back, repeating the same lines, attacking Karoline now directly. Meanwhile, Karoline simply posted on X, "You don't have to scream when you've got truth." It got over 120K likes in 1 hour. The court of public opinion had spoken, and this time the punchline didn't belong to the comedian. He streamed to win. Instead, he streamed his own downfall. Chris Rock's Instagram live stream hit 1 million views in under 10 minutes. But the energy? Off. He paced back and forth in a high-rise apartment, phone in one hand, the other gesturing wildly as if the crowd was in the room with him. "I don't care what anyone says," he barked. "I'm the one telling jokes around here. That girl, she's reading from a script." The comment section moved like a blur. "Not a good look, man. This ain't it. She buried you." Chris ignored them, or pretended to. "They're calling it a takedown," he said, sneering. "Please, I made Melania jokes for years. Now I mention Barron, and suddenly it's sacred ground." The viewers started dropping, from 1 million to 800K, then 600K. Chris raised his voice. "I'm not losing to a press secretary who probably had to Google how to spell Barron!" In the White House, Karoline Levitt watched the stream quietly with her team, her face unreadable. She looked to her assistant. "Post this," she said. "Chris Rock, 10 minutes of yelling. Karoline Levitt, 1 line of truth. You decide." It exploded. By the time Rock hit 400K viewers, even his most loyal fans were dropping off. He ended the live stream abruptly. No mic drop, just a screen gone black, and the echo of a career misstep ringing louder than any punchline. The world saw 2 styles. One shouted, one stood. Only one won. News outlets feasted. CNN called it a masterclass in composure. Fox News ran the headline, "Karoline Levitt outsmarts Rock with poise and power." MSNBC debated whether Rock's meltdown was career-ending. Meanwhile, hashtags shifted again. #TruthWins trended. #Chris Rock finished peaked at number 2. Inside the West Wing, Karoline read through statements, made a few calls, and shut her binder. "That'll be all for today," she told her team. No more responses. He ended it himself. Her assistant hesitated. He could try another video, another joke. Karoline smiled slightly. He can try, but the internet doesn't forget. Meanwhile, Chris Rock sat alone in his LA apartment. Lights dim, coffee cold. His manager walked in with a sigh. "You could have let it go, Chris. You didn't have to take on a 17-year-old. Chris didn't answer, just stared at the screen. One post. Karoline, at the podium. A quote overlaid, "You don't need to yell when you have truth." He closed the laptop, and for the first time that night, said nothing. In a world where shouting gets clicks, calm truth still gets respect. If you found yourself rooting for Karoline, share this story. If you believe public figures should be held accountable, hit like. And if you want more dramatic takedowns, epic debates, and viral face-offs, don't forget to subscribe, because next time, it could be your favorite celebrity in the hot seat. Stay tuned. Stay sharp. And remember, truth doesn't need a mic.